Good evening. This is Gloria Taylor Brown with a gathering of priestesses. This is our 46th edition of the show. And tonight we have with us Patricia Haynes, who is coming to us from somewhere in the neighborhood of Fort Worth, Texas.
Oh,
and Dallas, somewhere down there in Texas. And as well as Catherine Ravenwood, who's coming to us from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I'm Gloria Taylor Brown, and I'm in Oceanside, California, although I managed to make a short tour up to Albuquerque this last week for some business purposes. Never driven 800 miles in a single day before, with or without an extra driver. But I did do it, and I managed to do it without falling apart, and I'm quite pleased with myself, although I still feel like a truck ran over me. But that could be because on Monday I had carpal tunnel surgery. So they drilled a little hole in my hand and cut the carpal tunnel so that my fingers won't go numb on me, which hopefully means that I won't be dropping as many glasses of water or etc. on me anymore. It's always nice to not have to wear all your food and also to not look like you belong on the special bus whenever you're eating your cereal because you can't hold a spoon. So anyway, Patricia Haynes, we've known her for a number of years. She is, I think, so you've been to Egypt how many times now, Patricia?
5.
5 times. And she's been a real trooper about this whole thing. She's gone through a number of changes while she's traveled, and she's also works as a paralegal in the Dallas area, but she's a photographer extraordinaire. We've seen her photographs for many years, and part of what we wanted to do is bring you some of her photographs and let you her talk about them. And let's see, what else? I'm going to tell you right now, I'm having a little trouble because I'm not used to left-hand mousing, and so if it gets too bad, I'll just pull my arm out of the sling here and have to force myself to use this hand. So, but we're having a, you know, in many ways for us this is old home week because we've known Patricia for a number of years. I think I've known her since 2002 or 2003. And I also noticed that Loretta's on here, and I've known her since the late 90s, and Charlene Hidalgo and Gina Thies and Barbara. So it's really wonderful for you to be here, and we're delighted that Patricia could come on and share some of her wisdom and knowledge with us. And, of course, we have with us our Catherine Ravenwood, who is our sacred water priestess and tarot reader. And she's, I was over at her house for a couple of days, and she was kind enough to hostess me. And we went out and bought her a new bed. So congratulations on your new mattress.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
How come you have
on my new debt?
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
how come you have your elbow in a sling?
It hurts. It's not in a sling. It's just in a brace thing.
Yeah,
So no, I've got medial, the medial part of my elbow's hurting. So I don't know why. It has been a long, long time since my elbow hurt.
Yeah. Well, anyway, getting old as hell.
Tell me about it. Okay.
We have a visitor here.
This is Sekhmet.
That is showing us its back end.
That is Sekhmet. That's really her name.
Yeah. And then she's the one that I've had the picture of in the a promo piece because she's such a beautiful. Now, what is she?
She's a Russian blue.
She's gorgeous.
And she's full blood, so she has those bright green eyes.
Oh.
Like I do. But, yeah, they're known for that. And I didn't realize they were going to come in here. And, you know, the other one sitting on the floor. So.
Oh, yeah. Snakes and cats can't avoid. Love the video. So we've had both on.
Well, no snakes.
Well, you know, maybe we'll have snakes and cats at the same time someday, but hopefully not any time soon. Anyway, want to talk a little bit about I want to put in a new feature on this show. This is a gathering of priestesses, and of course we have many different divinities that we spend our time with or our allegiance to. And I'm in a conversation with a young lady the other day. I realized, and I've had a conversation with a couple of other people, that sometimes we talk about these people as though they're our next door neighbor over the back fence, and everybody should know who we're talking about. So because of that, a lot of people think that, for one thing, they don't get the name, and another thing, they don't know who we're talking about. It's literally like if I were talking about my next door neighbor, which none of you would know, and you go, oh, that's interesting, but who the hell are you talking about? So because of that, we're going to do a little bit of conversation about the priestess, who the divinity is that as priestesses we are serving or paying respect to. But prior to that, I do want to ask our question, which we do start with, which is, Patricia, can you tell us what took you onto the path of the priestess?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I've been thinking about that. And I honestly think I started that before I was born. And I look at the family I chose to come into. I came into a family in the 40s. In Dallas, which was very, very interesting. My father was a Southern Baptist minister, and my maternal grandfather was a Pentecostal minister. So I obviously came in wanting to do something and be of service, and just never really felt that comfortable in the church. Now, I did it gung-ho. I mean, you're from this part of the country. You know how that is. When you go to church, you participate. I taught Sunday school, but it just never felt right. And so in college, on the way from home, I started going around to all the different churches. One of my roommates was Catholic, so I went to Mass with her. And while I liked the ceremonial part of it, it was still the dogma. I'm a little bit rebellious, but it just didn't feel right to me that you have to do this and you have to do that and it has to be this way. It never felt right. So I just kind of wandered around looking for something, and in 1974, I saw a newspaper article about a speaker who was part of the Inner Peace Movement. It was a program started by Francisco Cole. And I kept pulling that article out and reading it, and so I went to their introductory lecture. And I kind of got really hooked. I got involved. It spoke to me on a level I'd never been spoken to before. And basically just understanding that, there's truth in all things, that one thing doesn't have all the truth. Well, that was very comfortable for me. So I did a lot of study with them. I taught some of their classes. I toured with them. And although I'm not really involved anymore, the basis for my spiritual beliefs really come from that program. And what I've noticed, I know even Raven has attended one of their introductory lectures. We all have some of the same friends, which I find interesting. And I still work with it a lot, an awful lot. And, I started working with the Tarot, and when I hit Egypt, that was it. I knew that's where I needed to be. And that's really where things started opening up for me, as a priestess, if we want to call it that. I'm sort of not what a lot of people consider, looking like a priestess or whatever. But, when I lived in LA in the late 60s, early 70s, I was called a hippie in establishment clothing. So I guess I'm a priestess in establishment clothing. So, my journey still goes on. I mean, there's lots more to learn. But that's sort of how I got started.
Well, we thank you for talking about it. And so, as you've moved forward into your priestesshood, I know that some of the things that have changed for you is, as starting out from a Baptist Pentecostal point of view, which is basically there's one way, or you've got one choice, one way or the highway, the highway to hell. So having come from that point of view, there must have been along the way some definite places where you were able to see beyond that, beyond the inner peace movement, and that actually said to you why you would want to be interested. I mean, this is the question I get. Why should you be interested in those old Egyptian figures? And I'm going to ask you that question because you're sort of from the same background I am, and you've really embraced those old Egyptian figures.
Well, it's like, I'm a big picture kind of person, and I kind of see how all of this fits together. I don't think that those, as my brother calls it, the lion-headed goddess, that I worship, there's so much similarity in good old basic religions, or how I think religion was meant to be. Mm-hmm. It's not a matter of worshiping an entity per se, but it's what kind of energy does that represent. You can always have the Christ energy, but I see like the story of Isis and Osiris. I mean, all of this sounds, I can relate that to my upbringing very well. I don't think it goes against it at all.
Mm-hmm. So as you've moved into the greater world of belief systems, I notice that you have chosen, at least for your screen name, so to speak, the goddess Sashat, who is frankly one of my favorites. Sashat is the librarian. She is the great librarian. She keeps the Akashic records, and she also is the one who drew the lines so that they could build the pyramids. And she was the one who held there was a cord. It was a cord in a box, and the cord had chalk on it. And the way that they would do the foundation for the building is they would figure out how many feet they wanted the building to be, and they would pull out this cord and put it down on the ground, and then they'd thump it, and that would leave a chalk line, and that chalk line was where they built to. And so that was Sashat's job. And many of us have heard of the library at Alexandria, and of course, although the library at Alexandria was started by Ptolemy I, and in an effort to contain all the books on earth, that was his goal, and he sent scholars all over the world to either bring back or copy books which they found and would bring back to the great repository of Alexandria. And whenever that repository was burned, we lost some of the greatest wisdom that was ever held on this earth. And we still have not regained much of it. I mean, for example, there was probably books in there that told us how the pyramids were built, and we wouldn't be sitting here wondering if the ETs built it if we had those books. We also had, they also had books about history and information, possibly factual information about Atlantis, or maybe they had the complete story as opposed to just the small part that was included into the Greek stories, since they are very clear that they was told to them several hundred years earlier. But Sashat was the one who looked over all of this. And as I said, librarians to me have always been a sacred breed. They generally don't work for very much money, and what they do is cultivate knowledge and keep it so that all the rest of us can go and find it, as opposed to having to sort through 300,000 books in order to find that one that has that information. So, Patricia, what was your motivation that caused you to choose that as a screen name?
Well, she kind of found me a few years ago, and I think it was Norman D. Ellis who was talking about her one time and kind of associated her with writing, and which kind of, I kind of got chills on that. And So I just decided that I wanted her with me to guide me when I do my writing. And I find that she's there. I mean, I'm now wearing her here. and partly because I didn't know about her, as you were talking about. But it was mainly the writing aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I found out, she was very particular about things, I thought, yeah, that fits. It really, she's a big picture kind of person to me, and I'm that way too. So it kind of helps. She kind of comes in and kind of helps me see clearly on some things.
Mm-hmm. And Raven, I know that you have a relationship with Sashat as well. So would you like to comment on your relationship with her?
Well, my relationship with Sashat is not as strong, but when I see her or am aware of her, I see her in a huge library where all the scrolls are and all the books are and all the information is. And to me, she is that access of knowing that it is possible for us somehow to get that information, even though specific things were lost, burned, whatever, we don't know. But if we can tune in to the higher realms, we can be given information, or we can be given clues as to where to go look. Like in a library, you say, well, it's, the number is 129.2, and you got to go over to that shelf and find it. And I think Sashat does that for me, is she will give me clues about where to go look and find things. And then I can get the information that I need.
That's an excellent way. I mean, she is, she is a very old goddess. Her symbol is that of it looks like either a flower or a star that is seven-pointed that comes from her head. And she's also been associated with the Pleiadians, the Pleiades, the seven sacred sisters. So however you find her, she is there and available for you. She is one of the divinities that I find to be very comfortable, I guess is the best way to describe it. Not that you're allowed to mess up her library, but no, you can't mess up the library. But you can call on her, whether you're doing writing or creative work or building something or creating something. She has the ability to step in and help you make that happen in a logical, orderly manner. I think that's the thing I like best about it. So we will be talking about other deities as we move along. Patricia, do you have something to contribute?
Yeah, on the last couple of trips I've made, with Nikki and Normandy, when we get to Edfu in the little niche there, that's we go in, we put in our hand, and she gives us something, and it's interesting. I got a real heavy scroll the last time. I figure I got to get busy because she's giving me a lot of work to do. And it was really interesting. I mean, it was very, very nice feeling.
Mm-hmm. So how are you doing on that scroll?
I'm working on it.
You're working on it. Okay, good. So, Patricia, if you would reach up there and click on that little green button so that you can show us your screen, what you're looking at, and begin to talk about your photos here. Now, we're going to cut Patricia some slack here. This is the first time she's ever done this, and we're hoping that it comes all across well. So, Patricia, we got it there, and then it went away. So,
can you see it?
No, it went dark. So, click on it again. Let me see. I may have to do something in order for it to be presented to everybody. There it is.
Well, it went to play, and it didn't want to do that, so I'll just go click on them as we go along.
Oh, yeah, no, you can't do play, otherwise it blacks the whole thing out. So you just click on the different images.
Okay. Well, I kind of was thinking about how I wanted to approach the whole thing about, presenting this. My photos are like my children, and I have thousands of them, and it's so hard to, pick one over the other. but I got to thinking about, you know, when you visit Egypt, and every time I've gone, it's always very different. And the Great Pyramid is always different. And so I wanted to share just the different kinds of pyramid that I've seen on some of my trips. This picture was from the last one, and as seen from the Mena house. And there's just something so majestic about it. And those of you, I think all of you have been there, then you know what I'm talking about. It's early in the morning, there's a little bit of mist, and I kind of like that look. This one is when we're actually on the plateau and the sun has come up a little bit. This is also from the last one. And it just really speaks to me. And there's something about the colors, and it's always, I don't want to call it a shapeshifter, but I mean, it's always changing. Now, the next one is from a trip in 2007. When we got to the plateau, it was so misty and overcast. It was just absolutely wonderful. And you see these majestic things, you know, coming out of the mist. And I just happened to catch this. This is one I know that Normandy Ellis likes.
Yeah, Muhammad said he had never seen the plateau like that.
Oh.
Muhammad lives in Egypt and has lived in Egypt for many, many years. He's from there. And when we got there that morning, he made the comment that he says, take pictures. He says, I've never seen it like this. This is unusual.
And it hasn't been since I've been back. And while we're at it, you know, talking about the Sphinx, you know, and I love this picture. I mean, it's so majestic. It's so clear. And I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about the Sphinx also. But I do believe it's been recarved. I don't think it's always looked this way. But the thing I noticed the last time, there was no scaffolding around her. And I call her her. And she was very, very pleased about that. Now, from that trip we were talking about before, this was made at that same time, on that same trip, with that mist coming up. I mean, it's just incredible. You know, it's, you know, I don't know, you were there, Gloria, I know. So I've never seen it this way before, and I'm still in awe, not because I'm such a great photographer, but that I was able to capture the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But you were there that morning too, as I recall.
Yeah, and it was really incredible because it was a very low-lying mist, and it was all over the plateau. And you know, the guards were all kind of like, I don't know if we should go up there. I don't know what's happening. And we're like, it's fog. Get over it. And they didn't know what it was. So it was interesting, you know, to experience that. But you know, the pyramids are really incredible. And one of the things you can't get the feel for is how big they are until you go there. No matter, I mean, if you had the biggest IMAX screen on Earth, you still don't have something as big as the pyramids are, because that's 476 feet high and 476 feet across the base. And that is bigger than a football field, since, you know, maybe you know how big a football field is. The football field's only 300 feet long. So it's taller and it's wider. And it is absolutely perfectly aligned north, south, east, west. That is Sachat's work. So she's the one that laid the lines of the foundation. And it is not, the variation is not even one-tenth of 1 degree off of east, west, north, south, which is remarkable. I mean, even today, people who go out and survey for laying property frequently cannot get exact north, south, east, west alignment. And if you draw a line right through the middle of the pyramid, it is literally an exact north, south, east, west, like a compass, and has the center core of it, of course, at the very center core of it, is the chambers, which, when you climb in there, are, again, exactly aligned to north, south, and east, west. And we're talking about something that at a minimum is 4,500 years old. So the other thing is that the pyramids at one time were sheathed in white marble, and then on the top of it was a golden pyramidion, and the golden pyramidion was carved with words. Now we don't know where the golden pyramidion went, but it probably went into some king's coffers somewhere along the line. You know where the white marble casing went. It basically built Cairo, and they are still finding pieces of it. It built into temples and mosque and bank buildings and sidewalks in Cairo. So that whole thing was, imagine it shining in the sun, the white marble with that golden piece at the top of it that was about 30 feet high. So 30 feet by 30 feet, that's a lot of gold. And there's some indication it was solid gold. So you can imagine why it eventually disappeared. So Patricia, you want to continue?
Yeah, I was just thinking, the first time I went to Egypt, it was December 1999. I was there for the Millennium thing. And when we first went to the plateau, I almost couldn't breathe. It just hit me so much. I know there was a lot of energy going on because of all the, celebration and everything, but it just took my breath away. I mean, I had booked this trip a year and a half out and just dived into finding out everything I could about Egypt from a spiritual point of view and, from an architectural point of view too. But Gloria's right. There's just nothing like the first time you walk up and you look at these structures and you go, how the hell did they do that? And I still feel that way every time I go. It brings that out in me. Well, I didn't. Usually after we do this, most of the tour groups do this, you go on a little camel ride, and I didn't do a lot of pictures about that. But I have to have the camels in there. I love the camels. I think they're absolutely fabulous. And this is from the last trip. They were very well behaved, and it was just a fun time. I didn't ride them last time because I've been having some back issues, but they did let me photograph them. Oh, so now we're going to get to what really gets to me every time. This is Hatshepsut's temple, and there's nothing more glorious in this place. I mean, I feel like she's my homegirl. I mean, I could live there, I wish, and I know people go there at night sometimes, and I want to go at some point. But every time I've gone, there's just something about it. I didn't know much about her until that first trip, and it's just absolutely amazing. And luckily, we usually go, for sunrise. And you can get some absolutely wonderful pictures there. I mean, there's such a feeling waiting for the sun to come up. It's so quiet. Now you've got a little bit of interference from the hot air balloons, but that's fine. I mean, frankly, I'd like to go in one so I could take pictures. But if you notice, there's mist around and everything this time. It's just absolutely wonderful. And when it finally gets to a certain place and you're standing up there, I mean, I think about what they must have felt, eons ago, standing there watching that. And probably I've been there watching that, yeah. But
it's an amazing picture. I love that.
Well, I thank you. I kind of like this one too.
And that's taken from the top of the stairs at Hatshepsut's temple.
Yes.
Okay.
We started moving up, and I would, I mean, I've got a ton more pictures, but I didn't want to do what I did on my, summer vacation.
That's gorgeous.
But I think it really evokes the feeling around that temple. I mean, there were a lot of workmen there. They're still doing an awful lot of work. It's a little different than the last time I remembered it, but they waited till after we had been there for a while. And one thing that Emil, our guide, was talking about is the sun comes up, the temple starts changing colors, and he's right. From the first one, there was a lot of orange and gold, and now it's become lighter. And you can now go up to the top. You still can't go into the Holy of Holies, but the first time I went, we couldn't even get up that far. So every time I go, there's something new. There's something I can experience that I haven't before. It does, you know, I feel like I've been there many times in I don't know how many lifetimes. And of course, you can't live there without having a little picture of Hathor. It's absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I'm a little short to try to take some of the pictures of some of Hathor there, but one of these days I'm going to get some stilts or something. But it's just, I mean, I could just be there all day.
Yeah, and for those of you who are not aware of where this is located near the Valley of the Kings, although not in the Valley of the Kings. This was a temple that was called a funerary temple dedicated to Hatshepsut, which was the only female pharaoh. It is on a direct alignment with the great temple of Karnak, which is over on the other side of the Nile, and they literally are lined up, which I don't know how they did that, because you can't see one from the other one hardly. You can see one or two obelisks from Hatshepsut's temple, and you can't see anything from Hatshepsut's temple over. So,
no, Maria Seshat did it.
Oh, okay. Well, then Seshat did it, and her surveying equipment is apparently very, very good and can go much further than our surveying equipment. Because it is truly remarkable, the alignment on these, the alignment of the Great Walk in Karnak and the Great Walk where you go up this set of stairs are on absolute direct alignment. You could, if you could walk across the Nile and walk directly west from Karnak, you would walk up that set of stairs. So go ahead.
Well, I'm going to do this out of sequence a little bit. Speaking of Karnak, this is one of my favorite places when you walk in with the bougainvillea and everything. I just love the feeling I get walking past all these guardians of the temple. I don't know. I mean, every time they talk to me when I walk by, and I know my brothers think I'm absolutely nuts, and that's okay, but that they really do. And this is also where I first became acquainted with this lady, Sekhmet. I had heard, you know, before I went the first time, they said, "Oh, this is a living statue," and you know me, I'm skeptical Virgo, and I'm thinking, "Oh yeah, right." Well, the first time I walked in and walked up to her, it's like I heard in my head she was saying, "Well, it's about time you got here." And she does. And Hank Wesselman wrote a wonderful article about his experience with the living Sekhmet. If you haven't read that, I think you should. But she does. I mean, you look at her, and it's like she starts pulsing. And, you know, she's very bold and honest with me, which is, I tend to need that a lot. Now, over the last few times I've been there, they were doing a lot of work, and, you know, you couldn't, there was, at least the scaffolding was gone this time. In 2012, there was scaffolding. It was hard to get out there. And I could hear her saying, "Where are all the people? Where are all the people?" And it was more than just a lack of tourism. It's like she really thrives on sharing with people, and with everything that's gone on, you know, the people just weren't there for her to share with. So, but she definitely is, you know, as much as I like Seshat, this one is sort of like, it's like having my mother again. I mean, she's always telling me, you know, what to do, and to get off my butt and do things. And there's just something about her eyes when you look in them. So, and all of you, I think, have been there, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I want to point out that this statue is considerably over 7 feet tall. I'm not sure how tall it is, but when you stand in front of her, you come up about to the level of her breast. And she is made of basalt, which is a very, very, very hard stone. It's almost as hard as a diamond. And she is the only standing figure that still stands in its own temple throughout Egypt. All of them have been moved. This one was never moved. in fact, they think she was walled up for a long, long time where no one knew she was there. And this is a temple that has two other chambers in it, one for her husband Ptah and one for her son Nefertum. So we always go and pay respect to Nefertum, and who is the lotus born, and Ptah, which was her husband or consort, and then come and speak with Sekhmet. So she is quite a powerful and incredible woman, and I recommend that you do find out what her story is. I'm not going to tell it now, but Raven, I know that you've had quite an experience with Sekhmet both here and there, and
yes, I have.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit as we're looking?
Let's go on and look at. Let's go and look at more pictures.
Okay.
Let's go back to that. I could get sidetracked for the next week.
Well, I know what you mean. I mean, I'm going through 3,000 to 4,000 pictures, and and it's hard to come up with just a few.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I have never forgotten my religious roots, and when we're traveling to Dendera and Abydos, you pass Nag Hammadi, and this is the only picture I've been able to get without phone wires in the way.
That's a good one.
Well, it was taken from the bus.
Yeah.
I'm learning how to take pictures through the window, but that's the one thing that just, absolutely amazes me. You take a picture and you think it's great, and you see phone wires and all these things. But we've never stopped there. I don't know. I have a feeling that I'd like to visit there someday. But again, I mean, I'm knowing about that the Bible that I grew up with, there were other parts that were missing. I think this is a very special place, and I think it appeals to people who have the same kind of background that I do. And what can I say about Dendera? It's the most beautiful place. Temple of Hathor. And I have so many pictures, but there's something to me very regal about just walking up to it. It just evokes a very peaceful feeling for me. And they're doing a lot of restoration, and I don't have good pictures of that, of interior, and the colors that are coming out on the ceilings and everything are absolutely fabulous. But when we're talking about being a priestess, there was a picture I got from 2007 when Miss Gloria was on that trip too. Muhammad had arranged for all of us to have white galabeas. And so we had them to do our little ceremony and things, and I gone ahead and I looked back and I saw everybody. It's almost like there was a procession of everyone leaving there. And there's just something about this picture that appeals to me. It kind of reminds me of maybe a time where I have done a procession there, or a lot of us have done processions there. And it's just a really special place.
Inside that temple is my favorite place, and that's the chapel for Newt.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the one that both times I've been there, I've looked up at the ceiling at her, and I'm immediately completely prostrate on the floor, crying. I can't stop crying. For as long as we're there, I'm laying on the floor crying. And just seeing the picture makes me go there again.
Well, if you'd like a copy, I'll send it to you. And I only have a couple from Abydos. And I don't know why I love Abydos, but, Gloria was saying 20 or 30 pictures. But the thing I like about Abydos is that when I walk in there, you walk in and it feels very cool. It's enclosed, and I feel like I'm really walking back in time. And some of the walls are just wonderful. And one of my favorites is this one. The colors are just so striking. And yeah, there's some wear and tear, but when I look at it, I don't see that. I see everything as it was meant to be. These are from the little various chapels around there. I have other pictures, but some people are looking at them, maybe want to use them, so I kind of wait and see what they want to say. And then this one, good old Thoth. Thoth and Seshat have a relationship too. So I thought I would include. It's funny that I included him on this. But Abydos is, there are a lot of people have had some really interesting experiences there with being shocked electrically or whatever. So it's kind of an interesting place. It's also where they have the frieze where it looks like there's spaceships and whatever. Helicopters and planes and everything. I have one of those and I couldn't find it. I got to find that photo. It came out better than I thought. But a lot of people say it's simply recarving. I don't know. It's kind of interesting to look at it, but the thing I noticed, there's a lot about flight in that frieze when you have the bee or whatever it is as well, so maybe it was meant to be that way. Who knows?
Well, it's also where the flower of life is, and the flower of life is carved into the Osirion, which is where the backbone of Osiris was buried, and it's graven into the wall. And it's circles within circles within circles, and it is precisely done as though it had been done with a laser. And we have no idea how it was done, and we know for a fact that it was at a minimum about 7,500 years old.
Well, I like the raised release there too. They're just they're very, very special. So that's another place I could probably, hang out in for a while. It just feels like home to me as well. And deciding what pictures to include and thinking about, the priestess path and what it would have been like to have been one in Egypt, traveling the Nile is probably one way to really find yourself. Because I find that, the people along the Nile, it's just like being back in time. Very little has changed. You see a lot of birds. You see a lot of donkeys. You see a lot of people working in the fields the way they always did. But one thing also are the children that you find along there. These are absolutely gorgeous children. And the way that if you're with Muhammad on the Afendina, you can pull over and go into some of these little villages. And you see these faces. I mean, they're very happy to see us, but I mean, look at their eyes. I mean, they're just absolutely amazing kids. And one thing that really struck me, this was in 2012, because that's the first time I was on the Afendina. You see women. This is like being back in time. They're doing their laundry in the Nile. And I know people would find that really strange. But I just found that very interesting. I wish we could have pulled over and talked to these ladies, but there was just something about it that, and even if you've just sailed the regular Nile cruisers, you still get the feeling. But with the Afendina, you can kind of get a little bit closer to the people there. And I always wonder, is this what it was like when they were sailing the Nile way back when? And I'm sure it was, and I'm sure I've done that before. Now, I'm going to brag about myself a little bit. This picture I entered in a contest with the Friends of the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology in London, and it won its category.
All right.
And it was hanging on their walls, and I think it still is. I think they kept the winners of the categories. I didn't win the overall one, darn it, but I was standing we were sailing, and I saw this donkey coming, and I thought, I wonder if I can get a good picture of him. And I don't know, it just turned out to where the boat didn't move too much or whatever, and he just kept going. And I know one of the judges said that the photograph was deceptively simple, which I know what he means. Now, I didn't put it on here, but I also have a butt shot of him going away. So, but this one, I kind of had a feeling when I submitted it. I submitted several photos, so I thought this one might be the one. And it was. That's the first time I've ever entered an official contest, so I feel really good. And, picture's hanging in London.
All right. Congratulations.
Okay. When you travel and you get to Aswan and you go in the Felucca sail, and we were late doing it one day on our time there, and this is what we saw. This was sunset in Aswan. And there's just something about it that just absolutely amazes me, because we'd never sailed that lake before. But there's just something very comforting and, very beautiful about it. And this last time I noticed, there were a lot of these kinds of sunsets and sunrises. And while in Aswan, obviously, we're going to go to for sunrise at Heaven on Earth, the Temple of Isis at Philae. And it's kind of wonderful. You sit there, you hang your feet over, and you just contemplate. You don't think, you just feel. And you kind of wait, and things start changing. Starts getting lighter. And I love watching the looks on people's faces. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. People cry. Now, I haven't cried. I'm not much of a crier, but we Virgos tend not to be that way sometimes. But when it actually rises, it just absolutely grabs me. There is something so special about this place that, there's a lot of been there, done that.
I cried there.
Did you cry? Well, I
cried a lot there.
Well, I'm not surprised. What's your birth sign?
Cancer.
I know. And I kind of like this picture as it's kind of a good one of the whole place. I have several different ones, but this one kind of gives you a picture. And in the morning, that morning when we were going out there in the dark, they cut the motor as we were coming past it, and the feeling that just comes over you, because you can see it and you kind of in the dark, but you feel it. It's an overwhelming place, and it's interesting to me that it's actually been moved. When they built the dam there, they had to save it. It was going underwater, and they moved it piece by piece. And I feel like they really moved all the energy with it, because I don't know, it's just very special. And I haven't met anyone who didn't like that. And I'm sure, both of you probably feel the same way.
Yeah. This is a temple that was built over several thousand years. That little kiosk there is referred to as the kiosk of Trajan, which was a Roman emperor. And the temple beyond it there was probably built around 1500 BC or earlier. So you're talking about 2,000 years of building just between those two buildings. And it's quite an impressive. And when you think about the fact that they moved it block by block, it's an incredibly massive undertaking that they took. And you can see where the water came to still on the brick, on the rocks, whenever the lake was rising, and they finally said, uh-oh, if we don't move this, we're going to lose it forever. This is behind the high dam at Aswan, and it's a magnificent facility, and we are incredibly blessed, and those that go with Nikki Scully and Normandy Ellis and the others that go with us with Muhammad's Quest Travel, in that we get to go there at dawn before anybody else shows up. And so there's nobody else there. We are actually leaving as the tourists arrive. And one of the things that for me has always been kind of a special place for me, beyond the temple that it is there, is that this is where we heard that Barack Obama had been elected president. We were there in 2007. Was that Patricia? 2008.
I wasn't there for that one.
Okay, I couldn't remember whether it was 2007 or 2008 when he was elected. Anyway, we were actually there, and Emil was on the phone with someone in the U.S., and he came running into the ceremony and announced that Barack Obama had just been declared the winner of as president here in the United States. And between the time that we left there and we got back to the town of Aswan, everybody on the streets had heard this. And as Americans, we were cheered driving down the roads of Aswan with the cry of Obama, Obama, Obama. And they just truly, they were so excited. I mean, it was just, for one thing, as they said, he has skin like me. And they were truly looking forward to change, and a radical change, in fact, in the U.S. And, you know, one of these days maybe we'll actually get that radical change. But it was a remarkable experience to have that thing occur, and to be at this incredibly sacred site whenever we first heard about it.
Yeah, it's this was also a place that I know was favored by Cleopatra.
Mm-hmm.
So she and Mark Antony used to have their, go there and have their little tryst, I think. So it's a very special place. So when all is said and done, and we've done all this, we always wind up back, in Giza. And this time, I got up early, and this is what was there. I told you the sunrises and the sunsets were absolutely incredible this past time. And that's why the pyramids, it's always changing. People go, well, don't you see the same things all the time? And I said, the structures may be the same, but what's happening around them is always very different. And it just always gives me a very peaceful feeling. But one thing I always tell people, Cairo is another big city, and we like all this spiritual stuff, but there's always something to remind you. Commercialism has hit. There's a TGI Fridays on the Nile.
Yeah, TGI Fridays, and there's a Kentucky Fried Chicken right across from the Sphinx.
Yes, I know. So those are the pictures that I have. Okay,
well, would you back out of the slide share so we can see you again? There we go. Hi, you did a beautiful job. Thank you so much.
It's hard to pick children, it's hard to pick your favorites. So.
Yeah, well, I understand, and I'm just like me. So that was a wonderful show, and it was just about the right length. And so tell us what's next for you.
Well, I'm working on a couple of books. One is my spiritual autobiography, and I was joking about, maybe calling it, Southern Baptist to Southern Egypt. And then Normandy came up with, what's a nice girl like me doing in a temple like this? So I've been working that. And the other, and this takes a little work, and I got some good input, from Normandy on doing a little research, comes from, I had a regression years ago. This is before I ever even thought about going to Egypt. And it was, it was in ancient Egypt, and I was a seer for one of the Rameses. I really don't know which one. I do not believe it was Rameses II. I had started out as a chantress and a priestess, and apparently I was pretty good at, predicting things, and I kind of worked my way up. And I can see where I lived. I mean, I had wealth, I had power. The place I lived in, I could see the Nile. And so one day, the Rameses came to me and was going to battle, and I had to tell him the truth. He was going to lose. Well, he did. And he came back and banished me. I lost everything. And I get bits and pieces of what happened to me after that. Here I was being a servant to people after having all this, wealth and power. So I don't know where it's going, but I've been doing a little research on the times so that I can kind of, put it in perspective. But I can see why writing things like that take a while.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so used to, working in the legal profession, I'm so used to nonfiction, the facts and this. But kind of moving into the novel type thing, obviously based on something that I recall, it's a lot more difficult. I never thought it would be more difficult than just the facts, but it really is. So I have no idea how long that's going to take me to do. But I'm enjoying doing the research around it. And the only other seer I have found people wrote about was a man. So, leave it to me to be something different. So hopefully one of these days.
Well, it's the story of Cassandra, I mean, she told the truth, and because of that, she was cursed. And
I've had people tell me, I had someone tell me in this lifetime, I had this disarming habit of always being totally honest, and it was not a compliment.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. If you don't mind, don't be totally honest with me today. I can't take it. Yes, I understand. So anyway, yeah, thank you so much, and I really appreciate that. And I think that whatever you create, it will be wonderful. I would like to see, and we've talked about this for several years, an exhibition of your photographs, because you do have some truly remarkable photographs. And not only
my jewelry.
huh?
And the jewelry I make, yeah.
And the jewelry you make, yeah. We didn't even talk about that.
And
But
the altar cloths, yeah.
yeah, she also makes jewelry, and she does tarot readings. And
I just recently became a Reiki practitioner, which is.
And one other thing, which was included in your bio, and I have to ask you about, is she's becoming a private detective, investigator. Tell us about that.
Well, one of my friends already is, and we've jokingly said instead of Charlie's Angels, we'll be Charlie's Crones. You know. But anyhow, one thing I know I'm very good at is investigating. You know, as a paralegal, I do a lot of it, and I've gotten really good reviews. And lately there's a big need for that. Women are meeting guys online, and they want to check them out. There are a lot of companies who want to know the truth on things. Now, how far with it I'll go, I don't know. Am I going to do stakeouts and, be, Jim Rockford or some of these other people? I don't know. But as far as, I like finding out about things. I'm also a genealogist, and there again, it's the research aspect of it. So, yeah, I'm in the process of doing that. So I get a badge and everything. So, but I already told her we're going to call ourselves Charlie's Crones.
Well, that sounds like a great idea. And I also, I was talking with someone recently, and they were talking about they were looking at going into business with someone, and I said, well, give me their name and what their company is, and I'll look them up. And I looked them up not in any special private database or anything that a private investigator has access, but simply on the internet itself. I found out that they had been accused of fraud several times, and they'd never been sent to jail for it, but they had been accused of it, and whether that means they were fraudulent or not, it would send up some red flags on my part. And they said, well, where did you find that? I said, well, everything's on the internet if you know how to look for it.
I tell people, give me an hour, and I'll tell you more about yourself than you know.
Right. And to me, it just seems remarkable that, in this day and age with the information that is available to us, that people are still allowing themselves to be fooled. Because, I cannot believe that the Nigerian scams are still running. I want to give you half of $15 million if you'll only put $30,000 in my bank account. But apparently they get millions of dollars every year. And just this last week, I got an email, which was one of these emails, we're traveling in Turkey and I've lost all my identification, and could you please send me some money? And of course, she had been hacked. But
yeah, that happened. Yeah.
At this point, the idea that they're even still doing those, that anybody would expect you to receive money from that is remarkable to me. And what's even more remarkable is they do receive money from it.
Well, I find that doing this kind of work, I use my intuition a lot too. I mean, all the guys out there are always telling me, think about this and think about that. But I don't know if you watch The Good Wife or not on TV, but the Kalinda on there, I want to be her. She's their
investigator.
Yeah, and she goes a little farther than I probably would, but I just find that kind of work interesting. But it's kind of sad sometimes too. When you find out and you have to tell people the truth about things. Some of them don't want to hear it, but anyway, it's just I'm 70 years old, and I think it's time I kind of move out of the real world and find ways to, support myself doing other things. And that's something I can do at home. And I'm still stay involved, but still have time to do my spiritual stuff, go to Egypt. I want to go to Bali. I mean, there's all these places I want to go. But I know it's also time to start teaching and doing lectures and things again. So that's something I'm thinking about doing.
Well, you can always do investigating the ancient Egypt. So, I mean, that in itself is a fascinating topic. So we're coming to the end of our hour now, and I really want to thank you for being present on here tonight and sharing with us. And I look forward to having you on again and having you discuss with us and maybe show us another slideshow. Maybe you can do one of the temples at a time, so then we can see. I'd love to see the pictures of Hatshepsut's temple. The last time I were there, it was primarily covered in scaffolding, but they had managed to uncover a few of the turquoise beauties.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, and Miss Catherine Ravenwood. I hope I'm not keeping you awake. I hope your arm feels better and your bed.
I'm having Hashimoto's crash tonight. I'm just tired.
That's all right.
And I just have toe surgery, so we're quite a group here. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm just sitting here. But Ravens also works for a church, and they're in the middle of, it was Palm Sunday on Sunday, and she's got Easter Sunday coming up. So I'm going to send you some extra energy because I know that you just desperately need it in order to get through this week.
Thank you.
And I know you will have a beautiful service there. I was in the church, and if you're ever in Albuquerque, if you get a chance to go to St. Michael's and All Angels Church, if for no other reason, they have the most beautiful stained glass. And I used to be a stained glass worker. They have the most beautiful stained glass I've ever seen.
They're done by John Tatchell, who was from Austria, and he was a art instructor at the University of New Mexico. They're quite world famous.
Yeah, they're gorgeous,
Yeah.
and quite beautiful. And Patricia, thank you for your beautiful photos and your beautiful self. And maybe next time we'll do your jewelry, because I know that that's another topic. You've got your ring on there, I see.
Well, I didn't make this one, but
But I love the earrings. I'm coveting.
they're Ankh, yeah, and they're
No, I'm coveting.
in lapis. So
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, and thank you,
right.
those of you who are listening to us and will be listening to us in the future. We really appreciate your being here. We appreciate any comments or questions that you may have. I do want to say I'm sorry I did not get back to the chat section. So, yes, she has 2 kitties, and they are quite wonderful. And if you're on Facebook, Patricia, she shows her kitties quite frequently and discusses them. So that's why her Sekhmet kitty was the one we think. So I want to thank you for being present tonight, and thank you all. And blessings for all of us, whether we've had toe surgery, hand surgery, or our elbows are hurting, or anything else. May you be blessed, and may you be whole. Love you. Good night.
Bye.